Today's video is of a bowl I made from this tree that fell and smashed this car. It was a knot that you see right here from the original video, and that's all I have left of it. I have a few shots of the original turning and the shaping, but just a few pieces before I come back and refinish the entire bowl. These last two frames are the best shots I have of the inside of the bowl that highlighted the beautiful color it originally had. So here's an oak bowl I made a while back. It had a big gap or bark inclusion or something in the bottom. It is a burl. It was a knot that grew out of an oak tree, and it has a lot of twisted grain, which is really cool. But it oblonged on me, and I didn't leave it thick enough to redo. I was hoping it would stay pretty, pretty round. I want to make it round or improve it, but I also want to highlight the wood itself. So I'm not sure what to do, but I think I've decided to take a bucket, put some epoxy in there, set the bowl down inside, have the epoxy kind of raise up hopefully to the rim. I don't want it to go over the top of the rim at this time, and then I might go back and reshape it. Leave a little wood on one side and the other, and then some epoxy in between. Take some more out of the middle and redo the tip. All right, let's see. I am gonna need something heavy to put on top of that, I think, as well. So I lined the bottom with some scrap wood I had. It sits perfectly in there. And now I'm going to pour my epoxy in there. I'm going to call that pink or fuchsia. This ought to do it. It's like 5 pounds of lead. So I noticed that the pink had more of a red look to it here, and the blue as well was much darker than it had originally started out. And I think I figured it out as to why that happens. When you mix it with a power mixer, it stirs in a lot of air, and the air kind of turns it foamy looking. So you think it gives it a lighter color than it actually will turn out to be. So just something to remember when you're pouring epoxy and mixing it. And you may also notice that the rim is black. When I came back to look a few hours later, it had absorbed or disappeared about an inch off the top. So I quickly mixed up some black because it was the easiest I had with a dye color, and poured it in to get the epoxy to raise to the top. And then a lot of it spilled inside, but at that point I didn't care. I had some epoxy on the rim that I was trying to get off to expose more of the wood, but I was very concerned as the wood was getting thinner and thinner, and I hadn't reached that point yet. It was running less than a quarter inch. Thankfully it didn't shatter or anything on me, but I managed to get most of that epoxy off and expose more of the wood, which is what I was hoping for in this particular situation. I'm gonna take it off, work on the bottom, and sand the bottom. Then we'll go back with the finish afterwards. So the Longworth chuck I'm using here has been a great help with my bowl turning process. But at this point, I was having trouble with small catches and pulling it loose. That has been the difficulty with this particular device, is without a really good grip, and the shape of your bowl plays a big part as to how well it grips. It doesn't always hold real well. I didn't want to use the tailstock. I didn't want to put any dents in that epoxy on the bottom. But as you will probably see, the epoxy disappears. I don't have that video, and I'm glad it did. I was going to leave it in there, but I'm glad it's gone because the bottom of the bowl was very beautiful. And at a couple of scenes, you can see the bottom pretty well. All right, we're finished with this. You know what I gotta do? I gotta sign that bottom. All right, we're finished with this hybrid bowl. We'll get some finish on it and then we'll highlight it a little bit later. Just gonna smear a bunch of this antique oil on there. Give it a chance to soak in the wood areas. There's probably not much to soak in the epoxy. There's a quick highlight of that. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. All right, nice thick coat to begin with. Let it soak for a while, then I'll come back and wipe it off. I really like the inside where that epoxy soaked into that bark inclusion, and it left a little color that stained the outside. That's really, really gorgeous. So this is one application. I just lightly rubbed it down with some acetone to kind of lighten up some of the spots in there. And now I'm just going to add another coat of the antique oil. One thing I noticed is when I put on a pretty heavy coat that last time, it actually dripped through some of the cracks, or maybe even through some of the grain itself. I don't know, but I did have some kind of oozing out in places. So I didn't like the way it kind of left little drippy, shiny spots. So I'm hoping it kind of sealed those up this time and doesn't do that again. I'm putting on another kind of liberal coat on here. Then I'll wipe it down again. Hopefully it doesn't take as much as it did last time. I actually this is actually the third coat. The second coat I put on about 10 minutes after I did the other one. It had completely soaked it up. So I'll just let that sit for a bit, soak up what it can. I'll come back shortly and wipe it off. And maybe that'll do it for coats. And that'll be the end of it. So this is the oak bowl hybrid. I have epoxy for the sides. And the wood, beautiful wood grain in the bottom and the other sides. I think it turned out really well. I have about 4, maybe 5 coats of that antique oil on there, which turned out really, really nice. It's a little shiny. I'm not sure I'm liking shiny yet, but I'm getting used to it. It really highlights the wood very, very well. Some beautiful grain inside. That's what I really wanted to show up. It had that in the beginning, and it kind of lost it as it aged and faded. So cleaning it up, I think, was the right thing to do. But getting a bowl that's already hollow, set in epoxy, and then cleaned back out isn't as easy as I thought. Probably it's going to take some more work on it. A lot of the epoxy did spill inside, and I took it out as best I could. And you may have noticed on the bottom, when I was going to leave a little divot of epoxy inside the original tenon there. As I started sanding, some holes started to appear, and I think it was bubbles that were inside that were trying to escape as it was starting to seal up. So then I decided to take it off, and I got in there and gouged it all out and slowly started removing the epoxy. I didn't know how much bottom I had left between the end of the tenon and the bottom of the bowl. And I did some scraping in here as well, so it was getting thinner. So the whole bowl turned out to be less than a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/16 in the bottom and on the sides. But that turned out really well, though. I'm really happy with it. I had a little flare that I wanted to keep that disappeared, but man, you never know what's going to happen and what you're going to wind up with in some of these situations. But anyway, that was a fun project, interesting learning process for me, and I'm glad that divot went away because that bottom is really, really a nice bottom. It has some character that had the bark inclusions and then the epoxy poured through there, so it shows a little bit of a dark epoxy in there, which is what it looked like originally, but it was actually a hole all the way through the bottom. As a little tidbit on that, this tree belonged to some friends of mine who are awesome beekeepers, and they come to visit my area for about 6 months out of the year while they have their bees out here during mostly the winter, fall, winter, and early spring. Take them back to their home state on the northern part of the United States. I won't even mention where they're from, but it's very cold up there. So they have their bees out here during the winter time, and I got a call that said, we have a tree that fell on my car. And when I got there, I saw the tree in the driveway, and I asked, well, where'd you put the car? And they said, it's underneath the tree. And that tree had so smashed it and completely covered it. I couldn't even see the car. I could not see the car. And I literally had to go to start cutting my way into the tree to find the car. And as the video or the pictures show, which I didn't take. I asked them for pictures. They sent those to me while we were cleaning it up. So that was the end result, or almost the end results of the car, and it was totally a complete loss. It was an enormous tree, and ironically, the lady had just parked her car, walked in the house, and then heard a noise and came outside and saw the tree laying in her driveway. It was in so much shock. She went and called her husband and said, come home and see what happened to my car. I'm afraid to look. So it was a huge, huge tree. And I think it took about 4 days at least to clean it up. And with the help of a forklift and some other trucks besides my own to clean it up and get it all up. So I took a couple of pieces of wood off that tree. And this was one of them. I have an original video of this. And as I mentioned, it warped quite a bit, so I wanted to come back and finish it. And then I have a second video as well from a different piece of wood of the same tree. Anyway, again, thanks for watching. Appreciate you taking the time, and I hope to see you again.